The sky was gray, like a broken rag on the ruins. In the Huaxia wasteland area, this area was once a place of a prosperous city, but now only the dead bodies of walls and high-rise buildings are left, and the air is filled with the smell of iron and rotten. On the street, groups of wives growled, dragging their broken bodies to travel around the destination. Their eyes were filled with a strange red light, as if they would snatch up and tear down everything alive at any time. Lin Haotian squatted on the top of a half-declined shopping mall, looking down through the broken window, with no expression on his face full of beards, and his eyes were as sharp as a knife. "Captain, there are at least 30 monsters below. We may not be able to rush over directly." Zhou Chang's voice came from the side, with a low and a little sand. He lay beside Lin Haotian, holding a self-made far-distance lens in his hand, and a piece of rag covered his face, covering most of his face, revealing only a pair of shrewd eyes. He is the head of the team and can always find out the dangers around him in the first time. Lin Haotian didn't say anything, but just clicked the head, and his fingers gently knocked on the combat dagger around his waist. His brain has started to calculate the route. This mission is to go to the abandoned supermarket to search for materials. The food and medicines in the team are almost complete. If you don't add them, you will not be able to save them for the next week. But now these groups are blocked on the road of necessity and are desperate to die. They have to spend a whole day on the road. Who knows if they will encounter other troubles halfway? "Xiqing, what's going on there?" Lin Haotian turned his head and asked the small figure far behind him. Zhang Xiaoqing was sitting on a pile of broken bricks with her legs on her legs. She opened a broken pen in front of her, her fingers quickly knocking on the keyboard, her eyes behind the thick-framed lens staring at the screen, and her mouth was still holding a piece of dry grass that she didn't know where to get from. "Don't urge, it's good now." Xiaoqing didn't raise her head, and she was a little impatient in her voice. "I'm hitting an old monitoring system nearby. If I have good energy, I can find a way without monsters. However, this broken system has been in disrepair for a long time and the signal is almost like a dog chewed. You wait for me for another 5 minutes." Lin Haotian didn't say anything, but just bent his eyebrows slightly. He knew that Xiaoqing's skills were reliable, but this girl had never been right in her mouth, which made people feel unsteady. He turned to look at the other side. Chen Manli was lowering his head to check the medical supplies in his backpack. The broken white coat was covered with dust, and the fatigue on his face could not be hidden. She raised her head and smiled hard. "Captain, there are only 2 doses of antibiotics left in the medicine. If you can't find any supplements, it will be very irritating if someone in the team is injured." "Don't worry, Sister Manli, I won't let everyone have any trouble," Lin Haotian said in a low voice, his calm and unquestionable determination. He stood up, patted the dust on his body, and turned to Zhou Qiang. "You go down with me and explore the way. Xiaoqing continues to do her things, and Sister Manli stays here to guard the equipment." Zhou Qiang clicked his head, but without saying a word, he directly pulled out the modified gun from his waist, checked the plug, and walked down the road with Lin Haotian Chao. The staircase in the mall had already collapsed halfway, and the two of them could only touch down carefully along the edges. There was a smell of mold in the air, and the gravel under the feet kept making a slight noise, making people feel worried. When he arrived at the second floor, Lin Haotian stopped and made a move to make Zhou Qiang sound. He looked out the window and saw the fogs on the street still traveling. The nearest one was less than 20 meters away from them. His brain was crooked, as if he could hear the breath of a living person, and his throat was filled with a low roar. Lin Haotian felt tight in his heart, and his hand holding the dagger tightened his body a little. He knew that although these monsters had no brains, their noses were even more spiritual than dogs, and even a little bit of wind could lead them to them. "Captain, there is an alley on the left, which looks nothing calm. We can try to walk over there." Zhou Chang's soft voice sounded, pointed his finger at a narrow alley outside the window, and the 2 piles of garbage and scrapped cars were piled up, barely able to hide people. Lin Haotian was eye-catching, looked at it carefully for a while, and said, "Okay, just go there. You can explore the way forward, behind my palace, move quickly, don't be surprised by those things." The two of them moved quickly, walked down the building through the broken fire passage, and walked towards the entrance of the alley with their wastes. The air in the alley was even more unpleasant. I don't know how many rotten things were buried in the garbage dump, and there were still a few mice squeaking over. Zhou Qiang walked in front, holding a stick in his hand, ready to face the sudden situation at any time. Lin Haotian followed closely, his eyes swept around, and he was careful with every step. Just as they were about to pass through the alley, a low growl suddenly came from the front, and the sound was harsh, as if their throat was torn apart. Zhou Qiang stopped suddenly and turned around and compared a hand to Lin Haotian, indicating that there was something wrong with him. Lin Haotian clicked his head, held the dagger tightly, slowly approached the entrance of the alley, and looked at it. Sure enough, there were 3 corpses surrounding a pile of garbage looking for something. His claws were full of debris, and his mouth was filled with satisfaction. "Don't die, what are these things eating?" Zhou Qiang whispered in a low voice, and a disgusting expression appeared on his face. Lin Haotian ignored him and flew in his brain to calculate the countermeasures. It is definitely not possible to fight hard. Although they can solve these 3 heads, they are more steadily and the surrounding gangs will definitely be attracted and they can't escape if they want to run away. "I can't walk over, find something to lead them out." Lin Haotian said softly, his eyes swept toward the surroundings, and soon locked a broken brick. He lifted up, weighed the weight, and threw it hard towards the other end of the alley. The tiles hit the ground, making a crisp sound, instantly breaking the silence around them. The 3 sluts raised their heads suddenly, their red eyes looked at the source of the sound, and then made a sharp roar, stumbled towards the side. "Let's go!" Lin Haotian shouted softly and quickly slipped over from the other side with Zhou Qiang. The two of them trotted all the way, and finally passed through the alley and arrived at a deserted parking lot. The distance is their goal, the broken supermarket. The glass door was already broken, and it was pitch black inside and it was hard to see clearly. "Captain, there is no silence around the supermarket, it looks safe." Zhou Qiang breathed and reported in a low voice. Lin Haotian pointed his head, but his eyebrows still didn't open. He knew that there was no real security in the Doomsday, and the more tranquil the surface, the greater the danger. "Don't worry, go back and pick up Xiaoqing and Sister Monli, let's go in together." After Lin Haotian said that, he turned around and walked towards the road he came. Zhou Jing didn't see it, and after him, the two soon returned to the top of the business. Xiaoqing was still knocking on her pen. When she saw Lin Haotian coming back, Lima raised her head and smiled proudly on her face. "It's done. I just entered the nearby monitoring. There is a road behind the supermarket leading to an underground warehouse. You should be able to find something. However, the signal shows that there is a bit of abnormal energy fluctuation, which may be a tramp or something else." "Abnormal energy fluctuations?" Lin Haotian raised his eyebrows, and the words were not right when they heard. Since the outbreak of Doomsday, the corpse has evolved faster and faster, and some have even begun to show strange abilities, such as being able to sense living people or cooperating with each other to hunt. Their team had encountered a cell that could produce low-frequency sound waves before, which almost forced all the members to get crazy. "Yes, the data is very strange, but I can't determine what it is." Xiaoqing snatched her shoulders, closed the plug and put it in her bag, "But I think we still have to go and have a look. If the goods are not enough, everyone will die of quenching if they are dragged on. No matter what it is, get the food first." Chen Monli heard it, sighed lightly, and didn't say anything, but just silently packed up his medical bag, stood up and prepared to go out. Lin Haotian glanced at her, then turned to everyone. "Okay, then go to the underground warehouse. Xiaoqing, you are responsible for monitoring and technical support. Zhou Qiang explores the way, and Sister Monli follows me. Everyone keeps the police and don't lose the team." The 4 of them set up and walked through the main door of the supermarket by Xiaoqing, and walked into the hidden back alley. As she said, the back door led to an underground passage. The iron door at the entrance was half open, so dark that it couldn't see its 5 fingers. There was a strange smell in the air, as if something had rotted for a long time. Lin Haotian opened the flashlight at his waist, and the faint light illuminated the road ahead. The passage is covered with dust, and the walls are covered with mold. You can step on broken glass and empty cans from time to time under your feet, making a slight sound, making people feel hairy. Zhou Qiang walked in front, holding a stick in his hand, and prepared for sudden situations at any time. Xiao Qingyi followed Lin Haotian tightly, and looked down at the equipment in her hands from time to time. The data displayed on the screen made her eyebrows tighter and tighter. "Captain, this energy fluctuation is getting stronger and stronger, so it should be right in front of you," Xiao Qing said in a low voice, with a little tightness in the sound. Lin Haotian didn't say anything, but just clicked the head and tightened the dagger in his hand to signal everyone to slow down. The entrance was a thick iron door, full of lenses, and there were several broken chains hanging around it, which looked like they were broken and opened by someone. Lin Haotian stopped walking, listened to the door for a while, and a low humming sound came from it, as if some machine was moving, or the breathing of a certain creature. "Zhou Qiang, prepare to open the door, I will cover you up," Lin Haotian said in a low voice, and at the same time made a move to Chen Manli and Xiao Qing, allowing them to take a few steps back. Zhou Qiang clicked his head, took out a crowbar, inserted it into the door zipper, and pulled it hard, and the iron door made a harsh squeak, and a zipper was opened. The moment the flashlight shone in, everyone was stunned. Behind the door is not a warehouse, but a huge underground space, like some kind of experiment room, surrounded by old instruments and test tubes, and there are still a bunch of incomprehensible charts on the wall. In the center, a huge machine was emitting low birds, with red warning signs flashing on the screen. What made people's skin even more numb were a pile of bones scattered on the ground, and several sluts were squatting there, gnawing on something. When they heard the silence, they raised their heads suddenly, staring at the door with red eyes. "Retreat!" Lin Haotian growled, suddenly pulled Zhou Qiang back, and at the same time pulled out the gun from his waist, which was a flash of bullet for the nearest porch. The gun sounded back in the underground space, breaking the silence in an instant, and the sluts roared sharply and swept over. "Xiao Qing, find the way. Sister Manli, be ready for emergency." Lin Haotian opened his gun and shouted, and Ziyan accurately hit the head of the cell, but the number of these monsters was more than expected. There were still a few more heads crawling out of the darkness behind him, which was astonishingly fast. Xiao Qing gritted her teeth, quickly opened the pen, and operated it quickly with her fingers, trying to find the exit line. Her face became increasingly difficult to see, because the data on the screen showed that the energy fluctuations here had reached a terrifying level, like something was being activated. "Captain, this place is not right. This machine is starting something," Xiao Qing shouted, with a rare panic in her voice. Lin Haotian turned around and took a look. The red light on the machine became brighter and brighter, as if it would explode at any time. "No matter what it is, solve these monsters first," Lin Haotian said, gritted his teeth and stabbed the dagger into the neck of a slut, and then kicked its body with a sudden turn. His eyes became colder and colder, and there was only one thought in his brain: no matter what, he had to take his teammates out alive. At this moment, Xiao Qing suddenly shouted, "Captain! I found a map. Here, it leads to a laboratory called the Origin of the Virus, which says there is an antidote there." Her voice was trembling, as if she saw something incredible. Lin Haotian was stunned, his movements were slammed, and countless thoughts flashed in his brain. Antidote? These two words are simply a fish in the end, but if there is such a thing, then their hope will be great. He turned his head and looked at Xiao Qing and asked in a deep voice, "Where's the map? Is it true?" He was very clear and pointed his finger at the screen. "Just in the database of this machine, I downloaded a part, but it has not been completely decrypted. Team leader, we have to leave here first, this place is about to collapse." Lin Haotian gritted his teeth and glanced at the more and more veils around him, as well as the increasingly dazzling red light on the machine. He knew that now is not the time to be hesitant. Whether this map is true or not, they must survive first. All members retreat. Zhou Qiang opens the road, Xiao Qing protects the data, Sister Manli is in touch with me. Lin Haotian yelled, and led the team toward the passage when he came. The roar of the gang behind him became closer and closer, and the low wings of the machine became more and more rapid, as if they would explode at any time. Every step they took was like dancing on the tip of a knife, but Lin Haotian's eyes were unusually determined. No matter how dangerous the road ahead was, he had to kill a bloody road with his teammates. The air in the passage became increasingly heavy, and the sound of footsteps and heavy breathing sounds were mixed together, like the whisper of death resounding in his ears. Lin Haotian was in the end and turned around and shot with his gun from time to time, trying to delay the speed of the gang behind him. The monsters were like irritated wild animals, their red eyes flashing in the darkness, and their claws grabbed the wall and made a harsh scratching sound, which was so fast that people's skin was numb. "Shou Qiang, what's going on in front? Is there a way?" Lin Haotian roared, with unquestionable urgency in his voice. His head was full of sweat, his gun was as stable as a wire, and his splinter hit the head of the slug one after another, but these things seemed to be killed, and more shadows crawled out of the darkness behind them. "Captain, there is a fork in front of it. The left side leads to the ground, and the right side seems to be a deeper underground layer." Shou Qiang explored the way forward, and responded with a sound. The iron stick in his hand was covered with black and red blood. He just threw it on his head and smashed it hard. Now his shoulder was still hurting. "Go to the ground. It's too dangerous underground," Lin Haotian ordered, and the fast disk in his brain was counting. He knew that the energy fluctuations in the underground space were getting stronger and stronger, and that machine might explode at any time, and staying here would be a search for death. Although there are also slugs on the ground, at least the space opens, and there can be more spirals. Shou Qiang pointed his head and headed towards the passage on the left, and the gravel under his feet was crunched. Xiao Qing followed Lin Haotian tightly, carrying a broken pencil bag on his back, holding a small device in his hand, and the downloaded map data was displayed on the screen. Her face was white and her lips were bitten tightly. It seemed that she was scared by the scene just now, but she still felt sorry for her. "Xiao Qing, have the data been saved? If the map is gone, we will run away in vain." Lin Haotian ran around and asked. His voice was low and he felt a little pressure. "Don't worry, team leader, I can't even want my life. This data will never be ruined." Xiao Qing gritted her teeth and replied, operating it quickly on the equipment, trying to back up the data to another storage device. Although her voice was hard, her slightly trembling language still exposed her tightness. Chen Manli ran in the middle of the team, her old white coat was soaked with sweat, and her face became more exhausted. She is not a fighter and her physical strength has long reached its limit, but she knows that she can't drag her back, so she can only grit her teeth and keep up. Her hands tightly held the medical bag, with only the leftover medicines and belts on it. This was the life-saving straw for the team, and no one could survive without losing it. As soon as the passage was about to appear, a half-open iron door, and you could see the gray sky outside. Lin Haotian felt relieved, but he did not dare to relax and be vigilant. He knew that the ground was not safe, and maybe there were more gangs waiting for them. "Shou Qiang, first explore the situation outside, don't rush out," Lin Haotian said in a low voice, and signaled everyone to slow down and squat down against the wall to rest for a while. Although the roar behind him was a little far away, he could still hear it. It was obvious that the monsters did not intend to give up and chase him. Shou Qiang pointed his head, put his waist close to the iron door, and looked out. His face became difficult to see in an instant, and he said in a low voice, "Damn, there are more than a dozen bins outside, scattered around the exit. If we just rushed out, we would definitely be covered by a bag." Lin Haotian raised his eyebrows and quickly calculated the solution in his brain. It is impossible to be hard. The current state of the team is too poor, and the spur and physical strength are almost complete. We must find a way to lead these monsters. He glanced around, his eyes fell on a pile of broken metal cans on the edge of the passage, and suddenly had an idea in his brain. "Shi Qing, do you have any things that can produce great and tranquil things? For example, something that can be controlled remotely?" Lin Haotian turned his head, with a flash of hope in his eyes. Xiao Qing was stunned for a moment, then quickly flipped her backpack, took out a small, unmanned machine-like thing from it, and grinned. "Captain, you're asking the right person. This is a small toy I modified before, which can make high noises and attract the attention of the gangster. However, there are not many batteries, so I can only use it once, and the distance is limited." "It's over." Lin Haotian pointed at the head, took the little unmanned aircraft, quickly checked it, and then said to Xiao Qing, "You control this thing, fly to the other side of the gang group, and lead them out." Zhou Zheng and I were responsible for covering up, and Sister Monli followed Xiao Qing and was ready to evacuate at any time. Xiao Qing didn't say anything, and quickly started operating. After clicking on the equipment for a few minutes, the unmanned machine emitted a slight buzz, flying out of the iron gate, and roamed towards the right side of the group of corpses. A few seconds later, a sharp high-frequency noise suddenly erupted, like a sharp whistle, instantly breaking the silence around. The wives were indeed attracted by the attention, and they turned their heads toward the source of the sound, and a roar came from their throats. Lin Haotian seized the opportunity and whispered, "Go!" He quickly rushed out of the iron gate and ran in the opposite direction. Although the air on the ground is still full of rotten smell, it still refreshes people's energy compared to the suppressed environment underground. Lin Haotian, with his team, walked past several collapsed buildings and finally found a relatively hidden abandoned gas station. The four of them quickly hid in a broken convenience store, closed the door, blocked the entrance with a shelf, and breathed quietly. "Captain, we're going to get a life back?" Zhou Qiang sat down against the wall, panting heavily, and the rag on his face had long been soaked in sweat. He took out a flat smoke from his pocket, took a deep breath after igniting it, as if he wanted to use nicotine to suppress his terror. "Don't relax, who knows what else is outside?" Lin Haotian said coldly, standing by the window through the gap to observe the static outside. His hand was still holding the gun, his eyes were as sharp as a knife, and he didn't dare to be careless. Xiao Qing sat on the ground with her legs, opened the sensor again, and started processing the data that she had just downloaded. Her fingers quickly knocked on the keyboard, and the data flowed on the screen kept flashing, and a glaring expression appeared on her face. "Captain, this picture is true. I decrypted part of it, marking a place called the origin of the virus, which is about 300 kilometers away from us, located on the northern edge of the Huaxia wasteland area. The data shows that there may be the source of the sterile virus, and even the trace of the antidote." "Anti-exemplar." Chen Monli repeated the low voice, and a flash of hope flashed across her tired face. As a medical expert, she knows more about what the medicine means. If you can really find this, it will not only save the team, but also save the entire human race. "Don't be too early, the data may not be all true," Lin Haotian said in a deep voice. Although his language was cold, there was a little more fluctuation in his eyes. He turned to look at Xiao Qing and asked, "Are there any other threads? For example, the defenses in that place, or the number of corpses?" Xiao Qing shook her head and said helplessly, "The data is encrypted too much, so I can only unplug some of it. The rest requires stronger equipment and time. But I can confirm that the energy fluctuation in that place is stronger than the underground laboratory just now, and maybe something more dangerous is waiting for us." Lin Haotian was silent for a few seconds, and the pros and cons were balanced by the flying speed in his brain. 300 kilometers are not far away, but on the Doomsday Wasteland, every step may be a life and death test. The current material and status of the team are not allowed to travel long distances, let alone face unknown dangers. But if there is really an antidote, this risk is worth a try. "Captain, what should we do? I really want to go to that place." Zhou Qian spit it out and asked with his eyes narrowed. His language was plain, but there was a silly look in his eyes. He is the most practical person in the team, and he always thinks that this kind of thing that sounds like a fish in the sky is not reliable. "No hurry, we have to replenish our supplies and take a break," Lin Haotian said seriously, and glanced at the state of the team. "There should be something around this gas station. Zhou Qiang, go and search with me." Xiao Qing continued to decrypt the data, and Sister Monli checked everyone's injuries and prepared emergency supplies. Everyone had no disagreements and quickly divided their heads. Lin Haotian and Zhou Qian carefully walked over the back door of the convenience store and went to the backyard of the gas station. There were piles of scrapped oil barrels and broken carts here. The air was filled with the smell of gasoline, and the low growl of the gangster could be heard from a distance, making people feel worried. "Captain, there seems to be nothing good here. The oil barrel is empty." Zhou Qian flipped through several boxes, and a disappointed expression appeared on his face. He was about to go and take a look when he suddenly heard a slight movement, as if something was moving. Lin Haotian also heard it, turned his head suddenly, held the dagger tightly, and said in a low voice, "Don't move, there is a situation." His eyes swept towards the source of the sound, a collapsed shed with a pile of broken iron skins at the door, and the just-in-one movement was transmitted from there. The two of them looked at each other and leaned over tacitly. Zhou Qian walked in front with a stick, while Lin Haotian was responsible for covering up. The door of the shed was half open, and it was pitch black inside, and there was a strange smell in the air, as if something had rotted for a long time. Lin Haotian turned on the flashlight, and the moment the light shone in, both of them were stunned. There was actually someone in it, or it was once a person. The guy was wearing a ragged military outfit, half of his face had rotted, revealing white bones, and his other eye was filled with a strange red light, which seemed to have turned into a slot. But what was even more shocking was that he was holding an old step gun in his hand, and the gun was facing the door, as if he had known that someone would come. "Be careful." Lin Haotian growled and suddenly slapped Zhou Qian. At about the same time, a gun broke the silence. Zibo brushed Lin Haotian's shoulder and flew over, hitting the iron skin behind, making a harsh sound. "Will this thing be gunned?" Zhou Qian was so surprised that his eyes were almost glaring out, and he quickly rushed to the side and hid behind the oil barrel. Lin Haotian gritted his teeth, and the wound on his shoulder hurted violently, but he didn't have time to rush to take out his gun quickly, and the slug was just a few shots in the head. The slut's movement was half a beat slower, and the slut hit its chest and head, and finally fell down, and the gun in his hand fell to the ground. Lin Haotian did not dare to relax, so he quickly stepped forward to check, and only then did he relax his voice after confirming that this thing was not calm. "Captain, what's going on with this gang? When will they use weapons?" Zhou Qian crawled out from behind the oil barrel. His face was hard to see. Although he has seen many evolved corpses, he still has the first one to get the gun. "I don't know, but this is not a good omen." Lin Haotian said in a deep voice, lifted up the old step gun and checked it, and found that there was still a few left in Zihua. Although he had been disrepair for a long time, he could barely use it. He stuffed the gun to Zhou Qian and continued, "The slug is evolving faster and faster, and maybe something more remote is waiting for us." Without further ado, the two quickly plundered the shed and found some out-of-date cans and a small bottle of gasoline. Although not many, they were always stronger than empty-handed. When they returned to the convenience store, Xiao Qing and Chen Manli had already handled their respective tasks and were waiting for them. "Captain, data decryption has progressed." As soon as Xiao Qing saw Lin Haotian, she said excitedly, "The map is marked with a mid-range station, which is about 50 kilometers away from us. It should be a lost military base. Data shows that there may be material and transportation there. If we can get it, we can save a lot of effort to get to the original place of origin." Lin Haotian clicked his head and quickly counted the route in his brain. Although 50 kilometers are not far away, the road is definitely full of dangers. The snail that can use guns is a bell, telling them that the road ahead will not be easy. But the current situation of the team is too poor, so you must first find materials and a place to rest in order to consider a more remote plan. "Okay, let's go to that mid-range station first," Lin Haotian said seriously, and glanced at the team's status. "Everyone clean up and go out while the sky is not dark. Keep a warning on the road and don't lose the team." The four of them quickly packed up, left the gas station, and advanced towards the center of the bet on the Shaoqing map. The wind on the wasteland was getting colder and colder, and the sky far away was flashing with strange red light, as if it was predicting that a greater storm was about to come. Lin Haotian walked in front of the team, his eyes fixed and cold. No matter how dangerous the road ahead was, he knew that he had to live with his teammates until he found the antidote in the story. The wind on the wasteland was getting harder and harder, and it hit the face with sand, stinging like a knife. Lin Haotian walked in front of the team, his old military boots stepped on the gravel road, making a stern sound. His eyes were still sharp, looking at the corners around which there might be danger. The teammates behind him followed closely. Haotian lowered his head and looked at the equipment in his hand, constantly adjusting the direction. Zhou Qiang held the gun that was just coming, and his face was heavily guarded. Chen Manli was carrying a medical bag. His steps were a little stumble, but he still gritted his teeth and held on. They had been walking for most of the day, getting closer to the abandoned military base marked on the map. The sky is as gray as a piece of dirty cloth, and you can see several broken building silhouettes from a distance, like the shadow of a central station. But the closer Lin Haotian got, the more uneasy he felt. There has never been real security on the wasteland, especially this military facility that has been used, which may have been occupied by gangs or other survivors. Captain, there is a silence in front of you. Zhou Qiang suddenly pressed a low voice, stopped his pace, and pointed his finger behind a bunch of scrapped cars far away. His ears were very sharp, and he just heard a low hum, like a gangster's roar, or like a machine moving. Lin Haotian clicked his head and made a hand gesture to make everyone squat down, then he put his cat on his waist and approached the pile of cars. Through the broken car window, he saw several slugs surrounding a broken body, and the flesh and blood were torn, making a nauseating sound. These pellets look stronger than the ordinary ones, with a long, slight hard shell on the skin, like an evolved species. At least 5, it's hard. Lin Haotian returned to the side of the team in a low voice, and said with a heavy face, "Shi Qing, can you use your gadgets to lure them out again?" Xiao Qing smiled wryly and slammed her head, saying, "Captain, the unmanned battery has long been gone, it's just a lump now. I can try to penetrate nearby signals to interfere with them, but I need to have a useful equipment. There seems to be nothing near these cushions that can make me do." Lin Haotian bent his eyebrows and counted in his brain. He knew that hard fight was not an option, and the team's spurt and physical strength were almost limiting, so he had to think of a way to be at a low risk. He glanced at the surrounding terrain, his eyes closed on a narrow path not far away, and piled up deserted containers on both sides, barely able to hide people. "Zhou Qiang, please follow me and touch the edge of the base from that small path to see if there are any other entrances. Xiao Qing and Sister Manli stay here, find a place to hide, and don't make a sound." Lin Haotian made a low voice and his temperament was unquestionable. Zhou Qiang pointed his head, grabbed the stern and followed. The two of them walked carefully over the group of sluices, walking as light as cats, and their breathing was extremely low. The air in the container was filled with the smell of iron and rot, and occasionally a few mice squeaked over, making people nervous. Finally, they touched the side of the base, and there was a broken iron network in front of them. There were a few low buildings that could be seen in it. Lin Haotian carefully cut a hole with a dagger and signaled Zhou Qiang to go in and explore the way first. The two quickly passed through the iron net and hid in the shadow of a deserted post. "Captain, there seems to be no one here, but it is not against each other." Zhou Qiang whispered softly, his eyes swept around. The outpost was covered with dust, with some broken military equipment piled up in the corners of the wall, as if they had been turned over countless times, but there was an indescribable sense of pressure in the air, as if something would come out of the darkness at any time. Lin Haotian didn't say anything, but just clicked the head and never put down the gun in his hand. He noticed a faded map on the wall. Although it was so broken, he could hardly see the layout of the base. An underground warehouse is marked on the map, which should be the place to store the property. He pointed to the map and said to Zhou Zheng, "Go here and take a look, and you can do it quickly." The two of them walked through several narrow corridors by the map and finally found an iron door leading to the underground. The door was full of lenses, but the lock had been smashed and it was obvious that someone had come. Lin Haotian opened the door, and it was pitch black inside. When the flashlight shone in, he could only see a pile of broken shelves and scattered empty cans. "Captain, there is nothing good here, it has been looted and clean." Zhou Qiang said disappointedly, kicking an empty box beside his foot, making an empty sound. But Lin Haotian did not give up. He squatted down and carefully checked the gaps in the shelves. Finally, in a corner, he found a hidden small partition, which contained several bags of compressed puffs and a small bottle of disinfectant. Although not many, it was already a life-saving thing for the current team. "Pick these up and go back to pick up Xiaoqing and the others," Lin Haotian said softly and quickly stuffed the materials into his backpack. He knew that these things would only last a few more days for the team, and the real hope would still be placed in that place of origin of the virus. They must come out as soon as possible to find the medicine in the presentation. Back at the place where Xiaoqing and Qinmanli were hiding, they finally smiled on their faces after seeing the materials. Xiaoqing patted Lin Haotian on the shoulder and grinned, "Captain, you still have to rely on me. With these things, we can at least fight for a few more days. Don't miss it. What's the case with data decryption?" Lin Haotian ignored her comment and asked directly. Xiaoqing's face turned right, looked at the equipment with a low head and said, "It's progress. I uncovered some of the encrypted information on the map. The place where the virus origin is indeed a laboratory, and the data shows that there may be inhibitors of the sterile virus. But the bad news is that the energy fluctuations there are so strong that there may be a big guy guarding it. Maybe it's something like the sterile king. The king of baby." Lin Haotian repeated his voice in a low voice, his eyes becoming colder. He heard this news that the zombie king could control other zombies and even had some wisdom. If there was such a thing, then they would have been a life-threatening death for this trip. "No matter what it is, we have to go." Qinmanli suddenly opened his mouth. Although his voice was light, he had an unquestionable determination. If there was a suppressor, it would not only save us, but also save more people. As a doctor, I cannot give up this opportunity. Lin Haotian glanced at her, clicked a little, and said to everyone, "Okay, let's take a rest for one night and set off tomorrow morning. Everyone keeps alert on the way, this may be our last try." That night, the team was resting hard in a dilapidated house on the base, and the low growls and voices of the wardrobe were heard outside, making it impossible for people to sleep. Lin Haotian sat in his wall, holding a dagger in his hand, and repeatedly calculating the next plan in his brain. He knew that this trip was not only for teammates, but also for those missing families and the guilt in his heart. As the sky was dawn, the team was ready to go. They followed the route decrypted by Xiaoqing and moved towards the place of origin of the virus. The road was full of dangers. Not only were there groups of gangs, but they also had to avoid the ambush of other survivors, but Lin Haotian, with his team, gritted his teeth and rushed down. After a few days of trek, they finally arrived at the place marked on the map, a huge laboratory hidden deep in the ruins. The exterior of the experiment room looked like an abandoned castle, surrounded by high-profile iron walls, with vines crawling on the walls, and a strange smell of fishy smell was scented in the air. The iron door at the entrance was half open, and it was pitch black inside, like a deep penis leading to the ground. Xiaoqing checked the equipment and her face became unusually difficult to see. "Captain, the energy fluctuations here are strongly deviated. The data shows that there is a core area inside, which should be the nest of the King of the Immortal." Lin Haotian clicked his head, held the gun in his hand tightly, and said in a low voice, "Zhou Qiang, you and I will go in and explore the way first. Xiaoqing, prepare to enter the system and find the whereabouts of the inhibitor. Sister Manli, guard the entrance and prepare for emergency treatment at any time." The four of them quickly moved apart, and Lin Haotian and Zhou Qiang carefully passed through the iron door and entered the interior of the experiment room. It was filled with old instruments and scattered test tubes, and there was still some blood on the wall, as if there had been a fierce battle. The fishy smell in the air became even more intense, making people almost suffocated. "Captain, this place is not in opposition, it seems that someone has come," Zhou Qiang said in a low voice, pointing his finger at some footprints on the ground. Although it was blurry, it was clearly left by humans. Lin Haotian bent his eyebrows and felt a bad premonition in his brain. He was about to say something when he suddenly heard a low roar coming from deep, like some huge creature roaring. Then, the ground began to vibrate slightly, as if something was approaching. Prepare for a fight. Lin Haotian growled, quickly found a cover to hide, and the source of the gun in his hand came from the source. Zhou Qiang also reacted quickly, hid on the other side, stomped on the gun, and prepared to open the fire at any time. A few seconds later, a huge figure walked out of the darkness. It was a woman that was more than 3 meters tall, with a strange black skin, spikes on her body, and her eyes were filled with red light, as if she could see through everything. Every time it took, the ground shook, and the low growl in its mouth made people's skin numb. "This is the king of the immortal," Zhou Qiang said in a low voice, and his hand holding the gun trembled slightly. He has seen many monsters, but the pressure of this thing is not of the same level. "Don't be stunned, look for weakness," Lin Haotian said, gritted his teeth and quickly opened the gun. Zifu hit the king of the celestial king's chest, but only the purity marks left, and blood did not flow out. The monster seemed to be angry, and suddenly roared and rolled over at them, as fast as an out-of-control car. Lin Haotian and Zhou Qiang were busy avoiding each other, and Zihua kept rushing, but the effect was minimal. The Snake King's skin is as hard as a steel wire, and ordinary attacks cannot break the defense at all. Lin Haotian gritted his teeth, and the flying plate in his brain was considering the countermeasures. His eyes suddenly locked in a sag behind the monster. The skin there looked thinner than other places. "Zhou Qiang, cover me up, I'll try its back." Lin Haotian growled, pulled out the dagger, and the whole person slapped up like a leopard. He swept away from the Snail King's claws, then jumped to its back, and the dagger in his hand pierced into the depression behind the head. The Widow King let out a painful roar, swung his body wildly, and tried to throw Lin Haotian down. But Lin Haotian hugged its neck tightly, and the dagger stabbed in again and again. It was not until the black blood sprayed out that the monster's movements slowed down. "Captain, it's done!" Zhou Qiang shouted, and took advantage of the opportunity to open a few guns into the eyes of the king of the celestial king, and finally let the monster fall down. He made a deep sound, smashed on the ground, stirring up a scattered soil. Lin Haotian jumped off the monster, gasping heavily, and covered in black blood. He didn't have time to rest and quickly said to Zhou Qiang, "Go and notify Shaoqing to speed up, so we have to find the inhibitor." At the same time, Shaoqing had already penetrated into the system of the laboratory at the entrance, and his fingers quickly knocked on the keyboard, and the data flowed continuously on the screen. Her face became more and more excited, and she finally shouted, "Captain, found it. In a cold pot in the core area, I have unlocked the passage, go and get it." Lin Haotian and Zhou Qiang quickly rushed to the core area and found the cold pot that Shaoqing said. There were indeed several blue medicines stored in it, and the label read Viral Inhibitor Test Edition. Chenmanli also came over and saw the drug. Her eyes were filled with excitement. "This should be true. I can feel the ingredient structure inside is not simple. Pick these up and withdraw." Lin Haotian ordered and quickly left the laboratory with his team. He knew that although the Mad King was dead, the energy fluctuations here were still very strong, and there might be other dangers. The team carried inhibitors and rushed out of the wasteland all the way, finally returning to the last refuge of human beings. When they handed the drug to the researchers in the shelter, everyone was in a state of turmoil. Although this is just a trial version, it is already a hot topic of human hope. Chenmanli took the initiative to join the research team to try to map improved drugs, while Shaoqing continued to crack the data in the laboratory and find more traces. Lin Haotian stood in a high place in the shelter, looking at the wasteland far away, with a little heavier look in his eyes. He knew that this battle was not over, the evolution of the corpse was beyond imagination, and the future of human beings was still full of unknowns. In the far sky, the red light flashed again, as if indicating that a greater storm was about to fall. Lin Haotian turned around and walked towards his teammates, ready to face the next challenge.